my wrestling and in my doubts, in my failures, you won't walk out. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. In the silence, you won't let go. In the questions, your truth will hold. Your great love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore. Tomorrow brings. With each morning I'll rise and sing. My God's love will lead me through. You are the peace in my troubled sea. Whoa, you are the peace in my troubled sea. Oh, you are my light, my lighthouse, shining in the darkness. I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storms. Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storms. Hey! Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storms. Fire before us, you're the brightest. You will lead us through the storms. My lighthouse, shining in the darkness, I will follow you. Oh, my lighthouse, I will trust the promise. You will carry me safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore. Safe to shore.
Children, I have a very beautiful hat that I want to show you. Now, I got this hat in the Middle East, in Lebanon. Nice hat, huh? I like dressing like a princess. Okay, I know I'm too old, but I can still enjoy the hat. This is a very awesome hat, and it reminds me of an incredible story. You see, one time years ago when I was in Lebanon, we got invited to a school. Now, this school was a Muslim school, and they wanted us to do a puppet show. Now, I don't do puppet shows unless I can talk about Jesus. And so the head of the school was actually the spiritual leader of the community, called an imam. I hope I said that right, children. Now, he invited us in and into his house. He was very gracious. He served us nuts and figs, and it was lovely, and nice cups of hot tea. And then he asked me a question. He said, "What are you going to tell my children?" And I knew I had to tell the truth, and I knew that I had to say it in the wisest way I could. So I was really praying. maybe not out loud, but I was talking to God because I knew my father had the answer he needed. So I smiled and I said, I'm going to tell your children a story of hope and love and peace and how they don't have to be afraid. I'm going to tell them about Jesus. I had to tell the truth. God never honors a lie. And he sat back in his chair and he kind of stared at us, and I thought, well, that's it. Now, he had a school of over 400 children, and he had only promised to give us 44 of those children. So we waited, and it took him a while to say anything. And finally he spoke, and he said, you cannot have the 44 children. And I knew that's what he was going to say. My heart just fell. And then he looked at me and he said, you can have the whole school. I couldn't believe it. What a miracle. I had told the truth. I had done what God said, and he still opened the door. And I thought, how is this possible? But I'm not going to question. I'm just going to tell all these children about Jesus. So they gathered the entire school, and we began the show. And some very interesting things happened. You see, he stood up in front of the whole school, and he said, all right, I want all of you to listen to these people. They are going to tell you the truth. And I'm thinking, really? Because you see, we didn't agree about who Jesus is. We didn't say the same things about Jesus. And he said, you need to listen to them. Everything they say will be the truth. And he just goes on, and I'm just standing there more and more amazed at God. I'm like, how is this happening? So he finishes, we start the show, and then something so beautiful happened. The children were like this. They were leaning forward to listen. Some in the back were standing on their chairs so they could get the best view. They wanted to hear. They loved what they were hearing. I told them the story of Joseph. I told them a story of love and forgiveness. I told them how they could be forgiven, how they could know Jesus. And they listened with their ears. And you could tell they were listening with their hearts as well. Well, he obviously didn't actually expect us to be any good. That's okay. God made us good. It wasn't us. But by God's grace, it was a great show. And the more the children listened, the harder he worked with the teachers to try to distract them, going out into the crowd and doing anything he could to keep them from listening. And when they finished, they were told to bow their heads, put their hands behind their backs. I wasn't saying this, he was. And make a single file line and walk out. And as children would walk past me, many of them whispered softly so that no one else but I could hear, thank you. You see, they'd heard, children. They heard the wonderful story of Jesus. They heard the story of hope and love and peace in a very, very dark place, in a place that everyone would tell you you can't go. So children, I want you to remember the story that I told you today, and I want you to think about this funny hat, and I want you to remember this, that there is nothing that God cannot do. And when you think of it, pray for those children. God knows their names. Thank you, children.